order the October 2nd meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee. The time is 7:15 and the meeting has been posted. Going on to item 1, roll call. Jim Olson.
Here.
Dan Stevens.
Here.
And Kim Smith here. Item 2, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dan Stevens, second by Jim Olson to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 3 is public input. If anybody would like to speak to the committee, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to address the committee? Second call for anyone wishing to address the committee. Last chance for anyone who would like to address the committee. Not seeing anyone, I'll move on to finance. Item 4, the 2019 Omni Center financials. I'll turn it over to Fred.
Okay, in your packet on page 2, the revenues and expenditures. Revenues sit at $393,000 compared to $425, a negative of $32,501. Keep in mind, there's approximately 2 months, there are 2 months in arrears behind on the room tax because of the way it falls on the requirement of the mobile homes, or motels, I'm sorry. And that would be an estimated about $18,000. Just for information, other than that, I don't have anything unless Dan does in reference to, it was actually a very, very slow month in the month of September from the Omni Center's point of view.
Make a motion to approve the financials.
I will second that.
Motion by Jim Olson, seconded by Dan Stevens to accept the 2019 Omni Center financials and place them on file. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 5 is the 2019 general fund financials. Fred?
Okay, the general fund financials from the expenditures point of view on page 12 is where it starts. The bills that we paid, this financial report represents the bills August paid in September, which leaves you 4 months left or a 33% remaining. That's somewhat the trend of where we are. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, only a couple things I just wanted to point out. As I went through here is on the police page 17. Just wanted to point out and keep in mind when overtime line, for example, we budgeted $70,000, spent to date is $75,000. Keep in mind that's also any special assignments in which that would constitute overtime, of which some of those would get reimbursed from other locations, i.e. Through some kind of that may be happening. The other thing on the fire department side, page 18, overtime, we budgeted 46, they've already spent 59. That one's going to be an interesting one to watch compared to the police department, because the police department, there were dollars remaining within the police department, for example, under salaries, because as you know, because of the transitioning. Whereas if you look on the fire department, there isn't a whole lot remaining within that area of that 33% area. Overtime, we budgeted 46 and we spent 59. I think I said that earlier, but anyway, I just wanted to point those out. And if you go to page 20, which Jared will elaborate a little more than that in reference to which we talked earlier this year about the snow and ice, sand and salt account. We're $22,531 currently in the hole. And Jared, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Fred. We are 22,000 over on the account. We do have both salt sheds full as we requested in the spring once we got the state salt order. We will be getting 150 tons of sand salt to fill the bin, which would be approximately $2,500, and we'll probably also get about 20,000 gallons of salt brine from the county, which would be another $5,000. So we will be very close to about $30,000 over budget once we get done at the end of the year. The other line I would point out, as Fred's been pointing out, overtime accounts, We are at 12,370 expended. We have 1629 left in our overtime account. If we get called out on Christmas, New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, any holiday or weekend, and we have to do a full rollout of all of our vehicles, it'll be about $2,500 in overtime due to staff not being able to take the comp time, because at the end of the year, the comp time's gotta be all zeroed out. So you will see that overtime account also go over at the end of the year unless you get lucky and it doesn't snow the last 10 days of the month.
Thank you, Jared. Any other questions regarding the general fund financials?
I move that we accept the 2019 general fund financials.
Second.
Motion by Dan Stevens, second by Jim Olson to accept the general fund financials. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 6, contract for legal services from the O'Flaherty Law Firm. I think we have a separate memo regarding that, and I will turn it over to City Administrator Eric Reinflush.
Thank you. I would not classify this as the contract for council services. This is rather the fee sheet for Sean O'Flaherty and his firm to do work. You'll notice that there's two different sections there. The bottom are the 4 items that we discussed with Sean that are currently outstanding, that he would operate at his current fee, the reduced fee. Anything new business, if you will, would be at his standard fee schedule, which is listed above it under A, B, and C.
I have one question, Eric. In reading the memo, it says, except for those 3 items, but there's 4 items.
Typo.
So it should be 4.
It should be 4.
Okay, are there any other, I guess my other question is, how does the contractual attorney spending compare with the budgeted amount for this year so far, 2019? Fred?
Okay, that was on page, just a second here.
There was about 12,000 left of the 80,000 budgeted for, unless I'm reading that wrong.
On page 12.
Well, I was looking on the wrong page, so.
So you, under contractual in that series of numbers, 100-51300-290, we budgeted 78,750, and we're currently sitting at 66,461, leaving a balance of 12,288.
Okay, Dan?
Just a general question for, I'm not sure if it'd be better fielded by Amanda or Eric, but being that we've hired a full-time city attorney, I understand that Sean has a long history with us. Is the plan to hire both externally and retain in-house counsel in perpetuity, or over time are we going to shift more of that function in-house to Amanda?
The purpose and intent of hiring the in-house attorney is to handle most of that business work. However, because of the historical background and perspective that Sean O'Flaherty in particular has, keeping him, I guess, retained is probably in the best interest of the community, that he can respond to that. Moreover, though, it's common for city attorneys to work amongst each other and have outside counsel where there's specialties involved. I would expect that we would still keep Mr. O'Flaherty involved in areas where our city attorney would deem necessary.
And is that like the long-term plan for 5-10 years from now, or is that?
It's always been the plan to have some amount budgeted for outside counsel. There's almost always going to be a need for that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric and Dan. So but the number budgeted for that for 2020 is less than what we budgeted for 2019.
Right, my working numbers are substantially less than what we had here for 2019, which
I
I'll be
think is-
proposing next week, but it's much, much less. Of course, like salt. Sometimes legal services are also variable depending on as the incidents come up. And it's been a challenging year, in particular with some issues that are listed there, A, B, C, and D, the 4 items there. Some of them are planned, obviously, with union negotiations. We know the contract is up, but some of those things were unplanned. In particular, sanitary sewer service agreement with La Crosse has proven to be more complex and longer running than we anticipated.
Just to be clarify, I don't have any problem keeping Sean on retainer. I just was wondering what the long-term legal plan was, and I understand that there's variable expenses based on occurrences, but
And keeping in mind, the outside contractual services may not just be for Sean. There'd be other attorneys that may be better specialists, depending on the issue as they arise.
Okay, thank you. We need a motion to accept the fee schedule.
I will make a motion to accept the fee schedule for legal services from the O'Flaherty Law Firm.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Dan Stevens, seconded by Jim Olson, to accept the fee schedule as outlined on the October 2nd memo from Sean O'Flaherty. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 7, consideration and possible action regarding an amendment to the Hoisington Kogler Group Incorporated contract. I'm not sure, are you fielding this one, Amanda, or?
Jared, are you, or? All right, so we have a proposed amendment to the original HKGI contract. That was a contract not to exceed 90,000. They are asking for a contract amendment for an additional 18,000. And primarily the reason behind this is, and why, and I don't want to speak too much for Katie, but I know she supports this amendment. When we bid this project, the developer's bill had kind of just come out, and we were just kind of sorting through. We knew we would need to make changes, but we hadn't really looked at how extensive those changes were. And so I think that HKGI has really gone above and beyond for the city. This turned into a project that involved a lot of writing new code as opposed to just recodifying our existing code. The approach that we took with respect to eliminating essentially all conditional uses required the drafting of all new standards. They've been instrumental in doing that for us and helping us through that process. And so as a result of that, obviously, it has cost more than anticipated.
And then, Eric, is there money in the budget to pay,
That'll let Jared
Or
answer. I was gonna,
or Eric? Whoever.
Okay, so I'm
Jared can
gonna
answer that
take,
question, and I'll,
yeah, I'm gonna take a little bit of it too. When we went through the zoning code, it is amazing how much over the years that the Public Works code was not very strong in the specification standards. So a lot of the water, sewer, street code specifications, stormwater code had been laying in the zoning code. So as part of the rewrite process, the consultant actually worked on identifying those areas, worked with me to identify which ones to leave in, and we took out 95% of it. We left a few things in there that we wanted in there on a broad based level, but we took most of it, and it's going to get moved to the Public Works Code under the respective utilities or just under street for the general standards. So that is actually part of what you see here tonight also, and with that, then we are going to try and put some of that overage into each one of the operating accounts for contractual services for each one of those utilities. So if we did that, along with the amount that was set aside originally through the capital improvements budget, there was $100,000 budgeted. It was anticipated that we would not have in-house legal staff, so we had but left $10,000 of the $100,000 out for attorney services. We've spent about $1,800 of that, so there's still $8,200 left there. If you charge each one of the utilities $2,500 apiece for the work, you'd have your $18,000 that would be needed. With that, I would also say in going through this, and I haven't been as involved as Katie and Amanda has, if you would have not had Amanda on staff, we would have probably spent $20,000 in attorney services, because there's been meetings that have happened that between Katie and Amanda. They have weekly meetings with the consultant on the phone. I know I sat in on a few of them, but when my areas of expertise were in order. But they've spent every Monday for 2 or 3 hours on the phone trying to go through the code. As Amanda stated, it's been more complicated than what they thought. I think we're going to end up with a really good product when we're done, and it's going to be hopefully when the rubber hits the road and we start having these meetings with zoning changes for people. We just did the query the other day, and there's 700 parcels with zoning changes. So we're trying to figure out right now when to have the consultant come in, when to have staff do the work. We're trying to be cognizant of those things, not have the consultant come down for every meeting. But there's going to be a lot of meetings and a lot of time spent yet on this project. So I think it's justified. That's our plan on how to fund it. I guess with that, I'd open up for any questions.
Thank you, Jared. Are there any questions, or did Eric want to, Eric?
Yeah, my concern when we see projects like this go over budgets by this amount is, do we have drift? Are we drifting from the end product that we desire? In reviewing this, I do not see that as the case, that it's been still a straight line from start to finish. The finish line has not moved. If there's drift involved in the processes, as Amanda and Jared pointed out, some of the depth there, my just kind of review of what's going on and participating and observing these, the extra work is not due to a consultant's leading in different directions than we're asking them to do so. They're following directions and doing it in an efficient manner as possible. What's changed is the environment around Act 67 and the getting away from the conditional uses, which then require, like as Amanda mentioned, the entire rewrite there. So the scope of work hasn't changed, but the size of the work has changed, if that's probably the best way of saying it.
Thank you, Eric. Dan?
Question, I guess, for Fred. Pulling the financing from the other sources as suggested by Jared, are there any issues as
Well,
he presented
I
it?
didn't quite catch all his locations. So what we have is we have $8,000 approximately left within the contractual account of the dollars that the attorney would be unused. You have, and Jared had stated then the balance of the, because I think you said 18, you were short, and the balance, so you got 8 there, and then the balance will be split proportionally between the contractual account within the water, sewer, and storm and general fund. I'm not sure
Correct.
where.
Wasn't there also, you were under the budgeted, it came in under the budgeted amount, I thought.
It originally was 90,000. We had, the original capital improvements budget item had 100,000. 10,000 was reserved for attorney fees. Before Amanda was on board, we did start spending some of those fees, so we spent approximately 1,800, a little less than 2,000. There's 8,000 left under the capital improvements budget before that would be fully
So it's the
expended.
same thing. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, Fred, what were you saying then about the dividing?
Then within each enterprise fund, we have what they call a contractual services account, because that's really what this is, and it would be charged directly as an operational expense out of the utility operational contractual accounts.
Do you see any issues with that?
No?
Okay, so the question before us then is if we'll accept the amendment for $18,000.
I'll make a motion that we accept the amendment in the amount of $18,000 to Hoisington Coigler Group contract.
Second.
Okay, motion by Dan Stevens, second by Jim Olson. Are there any other questions or comments?
It sounds from staff that HKGI has acted in good faith, and the project was, A, it's important, and B, it it grew to be a larger beast than what we anticipated, so I think the city has a responsibility to make good on that obligation.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Personnel, item 8, monthly department presentation. Dun-dun-dun. Fire Department.
Good evening.
Welcome, Chief Hayes.
Hi, Billy Hayes, Fire Chief of your Onalaska Fire Department. I'm honored to be with you this evening. Not to subtract from my time, but I did want to respond to the overtime discussion that we had. We've had numerous injuries, individuals out off of shift work. When you're working with a smaller staff, that has a tremendous impact. We've also had individuals leave and go to other organizations, so it's hard to backfill those positions. On top of part-timers who are qualified to fill those positions, they also leave. So you create a void sometimes, and that has been an anomaly for us this year, at least with the overtime. So we're hoping to address that, which I will address in the presentation. So as we begin. So to talk about your Onalaska Fire Department, our mission statement is pretty simple: to protect and enhance the quality of life for its residents, employees, visitors, and businesses, with responsive and comprehensive programs focused on fire prevention, pub ed, emergency response, while providing the highest quality emergency management for medical, fire, hazardous materials, and other disaster type emergencies. Pretty simple, right? It's a lot to do for our department, and I think you should be proud. I want to recognize 2 of our members here, firefighter EMT Jared Benson, as well as firefighter EMT Jason Velboom, Lieutenant Brian Everson, and firefighter EMT Mitch Schulte just left on an emergency first responder call. So I appreciate them being here, because I think it's important for our members to be able to see their government at work. So this is a good time for us. So to talk about your department, Fred, this is your favorite piece. I can touch this button and lay it down. So we provide fire, motor vehicle crash, vehicle extrication, emergency medical services, technical rescue, as well as ice water rescue, water rescue, and then we also provide a good bit of fire inspections, which has been taking up quite a bit of our time with recent new development, but also pub ed, and firefighter EMT Benson will be around to sign autographs of this photo after the meeting. I purposely selected this month to do this presentation, not because of the budget, and I'm the last thing in your mind, but that has something to do with it, but National Fire Prevention Week as well, which starts beginning on Sunday. As I pointed out to the department heads this morning, you can stream the National Fallen Firefighter Memorial Service this Sunday, 9 a.m. Central, live from Emmitsburg, Maryland, from the National Fallen Firefighter Memorial located at the National Fire Academy. So that kicks off National Fire Prevention Week. Question: what date is important for National Fire Prevention Week? October 8th. Great Fire Chicago. So that's
So
whatever week that October 8th falls in will always be National Fire Prevention Week. So a little bit of trivia there for you. Talk about our organization. We have 14 full-time members. The fire chief, myself, the assistant fire chief, Troy Goody, but then we have 3 shift lieutenants and 9 firefighter EMTs assigned to 3 shifts, A, B, and C shift. We currently have 1 vacancy, which I think Director Hope Burchell will give us a update on in just a moment. We have 17 part-time. This has been an active recruiting process for us to update our part-timers. We had a handful of part-timers who did depart the organization for various reasons, moved to different states, getting married, more money on their primary jobs, so it took an impact on us as well. But we have been aggressive in our recruiting practices through Facebook. We have been recruiting a variety of different certifications. Ideally, we would love to have all firefighter EMT, but that is difficult to recruit for part-time firefighters. It's difficult for them to obtain those certifications. So we have to work within a different process and a different model, which we're currently doing. Of the part-timers, we have 1 part-time training officer who is a captain, a lieutenant, and we also have an EMS coordinator, and then 14 members of assorted certifications and 1 full-time administrative assistant. Our station, we have Station 1. As you know, we discussed last night, for those who were here, another station that is coming. I would like to recognize firefighter Velbloom, because many of the graphs you're about to see, he's put together for us. One that we're working on is the other side of the city that we have to respond to, which is exactly perfect timing to where Rescue 1 just responded to, I believe, South Kenny so, which is a long response time for us. So as we move forward into the future, we still need to look at a Station 2. But out of this station, we run 3 fire engines, 1 aerial tower, 2 rescues, 1 water tender, 2 command vehicles, 1 boat, and then we have 2 brush units that we respond. I call them Brush 1, Brush 2. One's actually a Ranger ATV vehicle. So our call volume for 2018, we ran 1,589 calls. We're currently at 1130, that should be 7, I believe now? 8, close. So 1138. As you see, 76% of our call volume in 2018 was EMS related. That continues. We run a strong amount of EMS related calls. So that was part of the discussion of why we added the job description of part-time EMT to address some of this, to pick up some of the call volume, to make sure that we still have fire suppression personnel in the station. Responses by year municipality, 2016, 2017, and 2018. As you can see in 2016 and 2017, that is when we provided service to not only the city of Onalaska, but also the town of Madera and the town of Onalaska. In 2018, those numbers significantly dropped because we stopped serving those areas, I believe in April of 2018 prior to my arrival here. So this year, we only serve a small part of the town of Onalaska. But our call volume continues to rise, as we'll show. Just in 2018, our numbers were still high, even though we did not have Madera and town of Onalaska for 75% of the year. This graph shows where we've plotted since 2000. The 0.8975 shows predictability, 90%, of where this line will continue in the future years. Our call volume will continue to go up as our population continues to grow, as development continues to grow. So we can see where we're going to be heading based on data and numbers. Incidents by hour of the day, I think this is important to see because our staffing numbers are critical during the middle part of the day, which is when our part-timers have the hardest time to be here because they have other jobs. So we are running a higher response level during the middle of the day when the bulk of our part-time personnel are unavailable. So that's something to consider as we move forward in our staffing requests. Typically from 7 a.m. to about 9 p.m. at night is the peak of our call volume. Our emergency responses by the day of the week, as you can see, they're pretty consistent across the board. Monday through Friday mean nothing different than a Saturday or Sunday. Our call volume by times of the month, I said we were at 1138, right, Jason? 1138. So with October and November and December are some of our higher times of the year. So we do expect we're going to exceed last year's call numbers based on the predictability of the data that we show. Our training hours, I won't stay long on this other than beyond emergency response and all the photos I showed you of all the different things that we do, we still have to train. We still have to do fire inspections. We still have pub ed that we have to do. So there is a lot to maintain our certifications to keep up with our ISO rating, which is a class 3. If you don't know, the Insurance Service Offices provides a rating of 1 through 10, 1 being the best. We're currently rated at a 3, which is a really good number. So as you improve, you move up to 2, then to 1, and that's when your insurance rates really drop. If we fell from a 3 to a 5, your fire insurance rates would continue to go up. So that's how the sliding scale of what ISO means. Over 4,000 individuals last year were reached through pub ed division or our department. 17 car seats were installed here at the station just by our personnel. PD has an individual that installs them as well. And we conducted over 1,800 fire inspections throughout the city. Every business in the city is inspected twice. That's part of our 2% dues we receive back from the state of Wisconsin for doing those inspections. We are also the home of the La Crosse County CERT team. That was turned over to us completely from La Crosse County as they lost funding for it, but our members here have remained. So we still have our CERT team. One thing that I'm proud of is one of the things that was tasked of me was to have our Emergency Operations Center. So that is up and coming. We have our radios installed at the base stations, new boards installed. It's been updated, painted. I believe Alderperson Wolf has seen it recently, and there's it with the TVs on now. So, yes, so we have TVs with access to where we can have news, weather, real-time information as events occur, whether it's national and or here in the state of Wisconsin. So with that, I only had 5 minutes, and no, I went over a few, but I could spend all night long, Mr. Bueller, talking about the Onalaska Fire Department. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Dan?
Thanks, Chief. I know last night at the Board of Public Works, you spoke lobbying for the acquisition of the land over on Highway 16. Could you maybe, in an ideal world, tell me what your vision is? Are we looking, I mean, do you want a second station? Is it going to be staffed with 3 crews, or is it just EMS? Or what would that look like in your best world, and what would the impact be to the city? Both from a safety perspective and from a fiscal.
I had firefighter Velboom pull up numbers today, working with Caitlin up in engineering, looking at how the numbers are growing in that area. Our number 1 response location is Springbrook off of Critter Court. That is a long response area over because that is a senior facility, assisted living facility. You have a 128 unit facility that is getting ready to open on Emerald, which is off of Highway 16. That's still a longer response for us. You have the Country Club. You have new homes that are being built on Crestwood, as it exceeds and going into the bluffs, and is gonna, some of those homes will be challenging to reach. Your highest commercial areas over there. You don't typically run a ton of fire calls in a commercial area because your buildings are protected with sprinklers and they have fire protection systems and other things of that nature, but you respond to a multitude of fire alarms over there. I'm trying to give you a little background on it. I believe we need a station over there. It's probably long past due. Anytime you're trying to play catch up to growth, it's going to be harder and more expensive. As I presented last night, the one piece of property that was being looked at for the last several years. Last year, I think the property value was $320,000 for this less than 2 acre lot, and now it's appraised at $457,000. So that's just in 1 year's time. So trying to, one, find the property, but also I think strategically we need to look at what can we provide also in addition value, because our police department also needs a precinct in that area. So when you look at a complex, more than just bays to put fire trucks in, you need to look at what's going to serve the city, because I believe the police department has to come back here to do their report, leave that area, come here to do a report to be able to go back. So having a precinct area, have a community room, have something that Public Works can benefit from, whether it's a salt barn over there, a training facility. So as we look at this, it's more than just a 1 acre lot. We need it for a fire station, but we need to look strategically for the city. How does it best serve? So our response times are going to continue to rise to that area. As our call numbers go up, units become less in service. So one of the numbers that I'll present to you, I'll have to pull them together. Firefighter Velboom, I know, will help me on this because he's already provided to me before, is the number of calls back to back. So when you have 3 individuals on duty, one call just went out, Firefighter Velboom's left here by himself. If another call comes in, you're waiting on a backfill to the station. That means part-timers come in or full-timers come in, there's your overtime. Then that pulls out of your part-time numbers as well. So to have multiple units deployed in different locations throughout the city is ideal, but also know that that's a cost burden. It's something we have to look at strategically and financially and fiscally with the city. So I don't know if I answered all your.
I guess to be more specific, are you looking to have around-the-clock station manned with firefighters at all hours and EMT?
Ideally, yes.
And that would be 3 more full-time crews?
Well, you would need at least 3 person on an engine. If you did a mirror of this station, you would need at least 3 to 4 more individuals full-time per shift.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. We really appreciate it, and for the guys who did the work behind the scenes.
Thank you.
Appreciate that too, as well. Okay. Item 9, update on Human Resources on any police and fire staff vacancies. Hope?
Okay, as the chief said, we are currently in the process of hiring a firefighter, and they have completed everything but the physical, which will be next week. So we anticipate getting a formal offer to that individual by next week and hopefully start sometime before the end of the month. So an end is near. So,
So then we'll be back to full staff, or
Correct.
full-timers.
yep. And then we have 2 police officers that were down yet in the police department. We have exhausted our list, so we are looking to do another list. And we're doing testing next week on Thursday night and Saturday morning to start the process, and then it'll be setting up professional panel interviews and police and fire commission interviews, and then going through the backgrounds and that kind of stuff from there. So we're in the process of getting those vacancies filled, but right now the pool for staff is short everywhere, so we're competing for a lot of the same people.
Okay, well, thank you, Hope. Does anyone have any questions for Hope about the vacancies?
I would just like to say that I appreciate the updates monthly on this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we also appreciate, maintaining the standard that we expect, even though it's resulting in longer time to fill the positions. Hopefully, the rest of the crew that's having to cover the vacancies can hold out a little longer till we can get some more staff in place. Thank you. Okay, item 10, review and consideration of changes to the following job description. Deputy City Clerk. We do have it in our packet, but Hope can highlight the changes.
Essentially, the changes that we made now that we have the paralegal and administrative assistant upstairs is to remove the administrative assistant portion of the deputy city clerk so they can focus on the deputy portion of the city clerk department. So really, the only changes that we made in there had to do with that, as well as going into the physical requirements and getting those updated into the new ADA requirements.
Thank you, Hope. Any questions about that?
Hope is the pay grade the same?
Yep.
Thank you.
Would someone like to make a motion regarding the deputy clerk job description?
Make a motion to approve the city clerk, deputy city clerk administrative position update.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Jim Olson, seconded by Dan Stevens to accept the deputy city clerk job description update. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 11, review and consideration of a one-time stipends to be paid to staff in the absence of the building coordinator. We have a memo from Dan Wick, and I will turn it over to him or Eric.
I was gonna say I can talk to you.
Whoever makes eye contact.
Dan's like,
or-
let me just sit here. No.
Or Hope, I don't.
Essentially, what we've done is, because we had the absence of the building coordinator in the, at the Omni Center, and we've taken steps to kind of split that position into not just one position, but into a sales manager and then a event coordinator position, so that is assisted with that. But during that interim period of time when we were recruiting, 3 of our staff members in particular spent a lot of time and effort, and we want to reward them for that. We do have, as you can see, the recommended stipend for those, and then the estimated wage savings, so there's still a savings to the department. But we want to at least reward those employees for doing the extra work during that period of time.
And Hope, do we have, this is like a case-by-case thing. Do we have like a policy written or unwritten?
We
For
don't.
how we handle this or
Um,
determine the amount of the stipend if it's,
We don't at this point. That might be something we want to look at in the future. But I think in this case, Dan reviewed the work that was done and the number of weeks that was done and thought this was fair.
thank you, Hope. Eric, did you have a comment?
In general, when reviewing these requests, my position generally is the tasks that they're doing are generally out of grade. So someone's not just working more hours especially in hourly positions, you're compensated through the working more hours. Instead, what the tasks that you're doing and the stipend is in exchange for generally working out of grade, taking on more responsibility or tasks than you would normally be expected to do so. That obviously creates additional stress on the employee. Perhaps they're not fully experienced and trained for that, and we're asking them, we're expecting them to do a bit more than what their position would normally require. The second thing I generally look for is savings, having a stipend paid out of deferred savings from not paying wages or salaries. I don't recommend approving stipends if it's tasks that someone could be doing or should be doing and you're picking up the slack. Then you have to look somewhere else, I think, for where that savings comes from. So I recommend approval of this because it kind of meets both of those qualifications for me. It's, three, and it's temporary is the third thing.
Thank you, Eric. Jim Olson?
So these stipends would go to Dan?
No, these
No.
would go to our building manager, Brian, our building supervisor, Mike, and then our administrative assistant, Lou.
One question. For the sake of the common council, I agree with your proposal, and I agree with Eric. Would it be possible for those people, Dan, to give us a little bit of information on the jobs that we are giving them a stipend for, like a little report at the end of the year or something like that? Just for our.
Yeah, I mean, we could provide whatever you'd like. I kind of gave a little description of what each of them are doing for the roles in the memo.
Doesn't
And-
have to be extensive as long as there's some kind of an explanation. I would prefer that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to what is provided already.
It doesn't have to be lengthy,
Right.
you know, because we trust you. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
Well,
Quiet.
I
Well, I'm
will,
just listening. I'm waiting to see what you want to say next.
sometimes we have to digest what you're saying.
I'll make a note of that and respond to you adequately later.
I will make a motion that we approve the one-time stipends as stated per the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Dan Stevens, second by Jim Olson to approve the one-time stipends as described in the memo, item P11 in our packet. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 12, review and consideration of out-of-state travel for Jim Hansen and Adrian Moser to attend the Swartz Hypervac Street Sweeper Training for 3 days in November in 2019 in Huntsville, Alabama.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion's been made by Jim Olson, seconded by Dan Stevens. Is there discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 13 is to consider a motion to convene in closed session under Section 19.85, Paragraph 1, Paragraph E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting of other specified business, public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Specifically, discussion and negotiation strategy regarding the proposed sanitary sewer agreement with the city of La Crosse, the IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, Local 127, the OPPA, Onalaska Professional Police Association, the SORD, Supervisory Officers Relation Division.
I move we go to closed session.
Second.
Motion by Dan Stevens, seconded by Jim Olson. Vote is by roll. Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Jim Olson,
Aye.
Kim Smith, aye. We are in closed session. I don't know what time it is. 8:01.